Welcome everyone to a faraway land where mythical dragons reign supreme. We're here to tell you the legend of the dragon souls.
So sit down, grab a drink, and be prepared for an epic tale as we enter the land of the dragons.
Ooh. Now, there are 4 dragons who each rule over their own elements. We have the ocean dragon. We have the cloud dragon. Then we have the mountain dragon. And then we have the fire dragon. Wait, you gotta light up production. Get the light away. Get the light away. Now, due to a complex romantic entanglement, these dragons refuse to share the rift.
Naughty dragons.
Now, the dragons are wild beasts and need to be tamed. So mighty warriors from across the land will challenge the dragons, where victory will result in earning the warriors a piece of the dragon's soul.
It is I, a mighty warrior. I really like souls.
Okay. Now, back to our tale. Upon the death of the second dragon...
I will slay you, dragon.
Drakus, take it down a notch, mate. Maybe the warrior doesn't speak, okay? Let's try that.
Okay, yeah, strong silent. Okay.
Yeah. Now, upon the death of the second dragon, the world itself will evolve to take the shape of the newest dragon. Now, this dragon and his or her kin will now be the sole occupant of the rift.
One is the love.
Drakos, stop singing. Slaying 4 dragons imbues you with the power of a dragon's soul. Ooh. It also, however, attracts the attention of the mighty Elder Dragon.
Why have you killed my children?
Drakos, you're supposed to sound
So
epic.
lonely.
It's the Elder Dragon. Mother's love is epic. Drakos, okay. Now, slaying the mightiest dragon of them all empowers our champions with the breadth of the Elder Drake. That's it, the Elder Drake. Yes. And to secure both the power of the Elder Dragon and the Dragon's soul, you only have to slay 5 dragons. A worthwhile endeavor for anyone who truly values victory.
Yeah, victory.
And that's the end. Do the dragons make sense to you now, little guy?
You have any idea how condescending you're being right now?
We gotta keep it nice and simple for silver players like you.
What the f***? I was gold!
Gold.
Oh, look at me. I was golden.
TFT.
TFT. Oh, because League and TFT are the same thing.
I have so many feelings.
Oh, look at me, old man. I can play in gold too. Blah, blah, blah.
That's enough.
Germany for week 2 of the LEC. There's some huge matchups ahead of us, and it starts with a bang. Origen versus Rogue, 2 top teams going head to head, and only one will remain undefeated. They are getting in the zone, and we are in the zone here in ReadyCheck. And Vedius, Ender, and myself will check out some potential dark horses, and Drakos looks closer at the new boss in the top lane. Now let's start with the standings, where G2 and Origen are in first place. For me, however, the big headline, and probably for some others as well, is that they're joined by Rogue, who went 2-0 in week 1. Was that as much of a surprise to you as it was to me?
Well, I think for a lot of people that just saw Rogue in 2019, they would be very surprised, right? This team was bottom of the barrel in spring, started picking up the pieces in summer, but it was the big offseason roster move bringing in Han Sama into the bot lane, where it was a massive upgrade for this squad. And I think myself, along with many other analysts, expected this team to be pushing for top 4, and they came out with a pretty strong showing.
But we have to also focus in on the man in the mid lane. It is so great to see that the EU mid meme is not dead, with Larson having a fantastic
right now,
week 1. This man was phenomenal on his Kiana, on the Vladimir, honestly saving both games for Rogue. I feel like he has to be our player to watch throughout the rest of the split for Rogue.
And truth be told, you had hyped Rogue coming into the split. Now they delivered on week 1. So the interesting thing for me is to track how they can evolve, because we also have to look at their opponents. And now later today, they're up versus Origen. So we're going to see a lot more out of them.
Yeah, because I think in week 1, they weren't fully challenged, right? They played a Misfits and an Excel. This week, they have much steeper competition going against Origen in day 1. This is going to be a true test against one of those teams that we really projected to be at the top, I feel.
And we'll talk a bit more about Rogue later on in ReadyCheck, and where there are 2-0 teams. Unfortunately, there's also 0-2 teams. Schalke, Misfits, and Vitality for now. And I'm willing to give Misfits and Vitality a bit of the benefit of the doubt because of the influx of rookies they have. But Schalke 04, on the other hand, is a very experienced roster who didn't really show up in week 1. What went wrong?
Well, I think everyone's going to be talking about Forgiven here, right? Because his return to the LEC was supposed to be a really big deal for this team. Everyone remembers the glory years when he was at the top of Europe in that position, but I think his week 1 showing didn't deliver really for me. I want to see more out of him because I was watching some of his team fights. He's dropping a lot of auto attacks, target selection not always there for me. So I still think he has a long way to go, and only till he gets towards the top end of ADCs once again in Europe will Schalke be up there too.
And the biggest debate is, how will the mentality of this team survive? We all know it. There's no point beating around the bush. People look at the players on this roster, and there is a history of kind of catastrophe that follows them. So we're wondering, will the 0-2 start just collapse them from the beginning, or will they be able to bounce back after what was a rough week 1?
And I think in that light, this is such a good test for them. Now, I'm not wishing an 0-2 start on anyone, but this is definitely a team that can show up if they can overcome that 0-2 week and then probably maybe reach new heights. We'll have to keep a lookout on it. Not the great start, but of course, it is a very long season. Now, as we look at Misfits and Vitality, I said it already, rookies across the board. So are we willing to give them a bit more time? Because I'm looking at that Misfits, a team that actually had a lot of practice, or a lot of them last year already.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of see these two teams. I was expecting them to finish lower in the standings. So for me, I'm willing to give them time. But then the question becomes, like, how long do you give them until changes need to be made? So again, this is just week 2, right?
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and try to develop some of their new talent longer. I think another player like V-Boy came, or B-Boy came in. I'm still stuck in LEC update mode. No, thanks, Boy. We appreciate you. No, but B-Boy came in. I think a lot of people were expecting more out of him as well, being an import into the LEC. And if he can step up, then I think this team has a much better chance.
I personally think that Misfits currently is our worst team in the LEC. Based on what I've seen in week 1, my expectations are incredibly low. And in order for them to stand a chance of even considering being in the top 6, they have to show me a lot, because the foundation that they're building upon is not very high right now.
Ooh, not a great review from Vedius. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, stop burying these teams before they've even started. But we don't have any other information to go off, so we'll be tracking them. And in a week where the top teams look to prove themselves, we also have our eyes on some potential dark horses. Basically, teams that we haven't seen that much from either, but who we expect to pull off a big run. Ender, who are your hopefuls for a top 6 spot or higher this split?
Well, I think coming in, a lot of eyes go to Mad Lions, even as a predominantly rookie team. My eyes immediately jump into this bottom lane of Carzzy and Kaiser, two players that have had so much success in the European regional leagues that, you know, they went to EU Masters, they performed very well there as well. So for me, I thought they had good showings, right? Like this 2v3 outplay against G2 in their very first match. But in particular, I want to see Carzzy step up, as I felt like he didn't quite deliver to what I was really looking forward to, and I think he can grow a ton.
Maybe not the biggest surprise that we put them as a contender for that top 6, but are you willing to put them higher? Where do you see them ending up at the end of the split?
For me, I think spring split, this team's goal should be making playoffs. I think a 5th or 6th is feasible, but right now, I think there's a lot of teams sort of in that position outside of the top 4.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that what excites me the most about this team is that foundation. I talked a little bit about it for Misfits, but I feel like the foundation, the core that they have and the baseline that they're coming in at is very high. So given over the course of Spring Split, I think a lot of growth can be made, and I'm excited to watch them challenge for those top 6 spots. But the teams that I think that could challenge for top 3 are actually a team like Excel.
Whoa,
I think
okay.
based on what I saw in week 1, there's actually a lot of promise in this roster, especially with the upgrade that we're seeing in the bot lane, the fact that Kadril is playing extremely well. All we need to see is an improvement from their 2 solo laners, and if they can get that, then I genuinely can see this team fighting against the likes of a Fnatic, of an Origen, of a G2 at the top of Europe.
Look, Vedius, I agree with you. I think this Excel roster is a clear upgrade, but top 3 is way too far for me. I think this team could slot in a 5th or 6th position, maybe even a 4th if some teams fall down at the top. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people on this roster that have proven and have actually been sort of pushed out of the top tier teams like the
I'm
bottom
telling
lane,
you, Ender,
Patrick
this
and
man
Torre.
in the jungle, Kadril, he's already started off the split fantastically, sitting across 1st in most metrics. The guy was very impactful last split. We had our eyes on him, and we also know that Expect and Mickey can perform at the high level. So if they just clean that up, like that, this is a very good roster.
Yeah, sure, Vedius. You know, Kadril, he can beat Jankos and Xerxes with ease. You know, those guys aren't big names too.
I'm just saying that I think that this team can contest. Do I put them as front runners to win the split? Of course not. That's going to be a very difficult thing to do. But 9 weeks long, we saw the growth that this team made last split. I'm very hopeful for what they can do this split, especially with the addition of Youngbuck to the roster as well.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that you're willing to put yourself out there and say that, because it would be so easy to just say, well, G2, big title contender, OG might be in that top 3, as well as Fnatic, because we always put him there.
Yep.
But I like that you're putting it out there. And the thing that's important here is that there is ability, and the possibility is there, but they do have to rise to the occasion. And with the foundation, as you said, that we already saw last year, that might be the case for Excel.
Yeah, and I mean, Vedius sort of touched on it earlier. There are, you know, 2 players in particular, you call it both solo lanes, right? And my eyes go to Expect in the top lane. They both played on G2 at one point, you know? But Expect in the top lane.
What's going on?
I don't know, Sjokz. I don't know. My mind's everywhere.
Have I
Anyways.
convinced you now, though? Are you now bought in? Do you think they can be a contender for top 3?
Look, no.
Because, I mean, you're sounding pretty enthusiastic here, and like,
No.
what is it that the doubt exists in your mind?
Well, my doubt was that Expect was one of our best top laners in the league last split, and then he comes in and gets solo killed in his very first game. So I, in particular, I want to see a lot more.
I agree with, yeah, of course. Like, this is the thing. This all hinges on how the 2 solo laners develop, but I believe that they can. The question is, do you believe that they can as well, or do you think that they'll stay around where they are?
You know what? We'll leave it in the middle. We'll get a good indicator, though. I mean, we could talk about it forever, but they'll have to prove it to us, and they have a chance to do so because both of these dark horses will be facing off later today. Mad Lions up versus Excel in Game 4. We have another big highlight, our opening clash, Rogue versus Origen, which we're going to cover in depth later in Ready Check as well. Now, G2 and Origen, they are both expected to fight for the title. You might think, hey, you haven't talked about G2 yet. We're not used to that from you, LEC. Well, here you go. Because tomorrow, the powerhouses OG and G2 face off in a pivotal matchup. This is our Alienware Match of the Week.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is a matchup between the best and second best team in the league.
I realized after joining Origen, I'm not afraid of G2 anymore. He should be.
Bold statements. Origen looks like the best team.
Job. It has to be overstated as well. Crown shot still laying down a bit of damage. E goes the wrong way. Now with the Eden Jankos. He's still alive. G2. And on anyone. Look at the Dawning Shadow.
What you gonna do when they come for you?
I'm pretty sure that everyone who plays against us can never feel safe. We are chaos.
Origen versus G2 is no longer the David versus Goliath matchup that we used to have.
Upset was not touched in that fight. 9K damage. That is so not okay.
I think me and Upset will show him what a true world-class bot lane is.
Dreams, he just walks the entire way to the hook.
How did he hit that?
Away by the cannon barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2.
This is Xerxes might be because he knows that
Body slam flash. That's gonna be first blood.
this is why Xerxes is one of the best junglers in the LEC.
We are going to do great things in 2020.
We as G2 are the best team that Euro has ever seen, and if people are not scared of us, then we should remind them.
G2 and Origen are definitely the two best teams in the LEC.
We still have the exact same players. And these are the players that went to the World Final and dominated Europe.
I think this weekend's gonna be a bloodbath.
Indeed, the fighting words from the junglers, mostly in these two undefeated teams. And I'm loving the fire coming out of Xerxes. He's been heralded, I believe, by you, Ender. Or am I lying? As the
Some
best jungler in the league.
Motto
I mean, they all say the same, right?
Yeah.
What was your motto?
I mean, everyone sort of said for basically the last year now that these are the two best junglers in the league. I don't think you can really make a case for anyone else to knock these two out. And that always makes it really exciting to see these two teams play against each other because Sjokz has the support of just a fully stacked roster behind him. Last year, Xerxes couldn't say the same. This year, Xerxes can too, so it's going to mean a very even one-on-one.
For me, the biggest thing about this matchup is last year, stylistically, Origen was a huge mismatch. The aggression from G2, the sheer lane dominance that came out from G2 was often something that would overwhelm Origen. But now, with the introduction of Destiny and Xerxes to the roster, it to me feels like that they have way more early game aggression and they have way more options to be able to challenge some of the playmaking that G2 often loves to bring to the Rift.
I mean, that's a great point. Sorry,
I was just going to say that play from Xerxes was so cool. These are, of course, clips from that Match of the Week video, but Xerxes has this uncanny ability to track the opposing jungler and just get in where he shouldn't be allowed to be, and that is what turns into these really cool early game ganks where he just shows up where you don't think he's going to be.
It's very exciting to watch him, and I think, you look at G2 and Origen, and it was last year around as well that very early on in the split, OG was able to beat a G2 Esports because OG is a team that you always expect to show up very prepared and polished at the beginning of a split, where I think we can say, even after the 2-0 first week of G2, it was a bit messy in that early game, so this could be their chance.
When I think of them, it's like you have Origen, who's like a still lake, they're calm, that you can easily float your boat along it. But G2 is like the chaotic waves of the ocean that you can never prepare for. And that's what always makes this matchup interesting, because is the preparation enough to deal with the chaos that G2 will always bring to a matchup?
I think you could have improved that analysis with maybe some puppets, perhaps. You get the leg, the boat to sail across it.
You could. And well, in that regard, I think this is also going to be a proving grounds. Of course, they could both lose today, and then they're not undefeated tomorrow. But these are the kind of teams that you want to show up against and kind of install your power and your strength straight from the beginning of the split, so you know that you won't run into them later in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, no one would be surprised if this matchup was our finals matchup at the end of the spring split. Origen versus G2, just like in 2019. So I think it's very important that Origen make a statement early on in the split like they did last time.
We'll see. That is tomorrow, but week 2 is upon us, and with it comes a new boss in the top lane. Drakos set us up for Sett.
Oh no.
That's right, Efi. The boss is finally here. This Noxian pit fighting twunk is going to be all the rage here in week 2 of the LEC, because who doesn't love a big ball of stats with a left hook like Tyson and a baby face like Bieber himself? Now, most of you have played against Sett. You've experienced his incredible damage, his uncanny ability to 2v1, and if you've played more than one game against him, you've probably also complained about it on Reddit. But that's solo queue. So what does Sett look like in pro play? Now, luckily for us, the LPL has already got to try their hand at the boss, so we have some nice highlights from JDG in the LPL to show you what he's all about. And as you look at this fight, you might notice the Sett kind of just appear in the middle of the team and literally kill everyone. So that ton of damage, that unkillable nature when you try to all-in him, that's still there. But it's not just Sett's numbers that set him up for success in the LEC, it is also the meta. Now, every Sett's dream is to ult a fatty tank from the front line and dunk them right back down into the back line, where the bonus health damage on his ult can immediately end a fight. So for Sett players, this meta is a dream come true, because who do we have in the top lane but Ornn, an easy lane opponent and a tank for him to dunk? What supports are being played? Nautilus, Leona, and Braum, all champions that love to get close and are essentially walking damage buffs for Sett's ults. And you might look at me and you might say, but come on, Drakos. It's not like teams have to group up or anything, right? Well, I don't know, friend. Are there any especially important objectives that team might have to commit multiple members to fight for at multiple points in the game? Do they just happen to live in pits? The literal thing that Sett fights for as a living? The pit boss in the pit? So yeah, Sett's here. He's gonna be strong. He isn't unbeatable, but it's clear to see exactly how he can be used in the LEC. For builds and runes, pros will most likely take a rune page with Conqueror and Resolve as a secondary tree. For build, it's quite flexible. As long as you're building health and damage, there's not really strictly wrong choices. I personally like Triforce into Sterix. Sterix especially is very strong, but we do see players opt into items like Titanic Hydra, Death Dance, Black Cleaver. We even saw Phantom Dancer in a Korean solo queue game. Depending on the state of the game and the lane matchup, it will change significantly. Now, if you're playing at home, don't worry. Nerfs are already on the PBE. But in the meantime, Ender and I have put together a helpful guide on how to handle Sett in your solo queue games.
It's easy. Yeah.
Can I just say that I don't think that works? I've repeatedly tried to walk away from Sett. Repeatedly.
It's just 3 words, Sjokz.
I know.
It's so easy. Like, he can't get to you if you just walk the other direction.
He can punch you from like a mile away though, right?
Do you have any idea how low that range is?
It's like...
Not low enough.
Not low enough. Nerf.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Interesting. Do we think that the power of Sett is enough to bring about serious changes in kind of the game speed and the action levels in our games, or will that not be influenced by it at all?
I personally don't think so. So I am very much of the opinion that we probably will see Sett today. He's strong in solo queue. He's getting nerfs next patch, right? But I think it's so easy to counter this guy compositionally. You just need long range and CC. That's really easy to get in the game when you have champions like Aphelios, like Senna, Nautilus. Like, he just can't touch you.
Drakos talked about it. The guy that makes a living by fighting in the pits. You're going to have to go to the pits at some points. You're going to have to battle. You're going to have to fight for your life. And when you're in that situation, no one can fight the boss.
I'm sure all our LEC coaches are looking into the lore to try and put together their drafts like, ah, yes, the pit boss, genius.
No.
But in all seriousness, like, I think that in lane, he can be pretty strong. And I think that right now his numbers are just relatively high, which means that he can be pretty decent. But it depends on how much value and how much prep teams have actually gone into dealing with, making use of. So honestly, like, it's up in the air as to how much value they actually put on him. I think Senna's still high priority, Aphelios still high priority, and Akali still up there as well.
We'll see. And also important is that in addition to Sett, Lux and Syndra are also re-enabled for week 2. So a bit more diversity in what can be picked here in our week 2. So we have a new champion, top teams clashing. What a week we have ahead of us. And it starts with Rogue versus Origen, a fight to stay undefeated at the top of the LEC as both teams look to continue their great start to 2020. You can also vote on who you think will continue their winning streak right now. Spam RGE for Rogue or OG for Origen in chat. Right, which apparently...
All right, I'm in there. I'm in there early.
Now voted in chat.
My vote is OG for anyone that's wondering.
Yeah, okay. The biggest memer and Twitch chatter on the team. We've given them too much power. Besides voting in chat, what are you excited about when it comes to Rogue? We've said it many, many times, but narrow it down. Why should I be watching them?
It's the man in the mid lane, Larson. For me, we talked about him earlier on in the day, but I have to keep bringing him up because he brings an X factor to the team that I feel we have not seen before from Rogue. Just look at your screen right now. Look at the outplays that this man brings. He was able to solo carry in this Vladimir game, diving in 1v5, where in a composition, he had to make these plays happen. Otherwise, his team was not going to fight find victory.
And you might think, why are we going on about him? But a 22 KDA, 3 solo kills, and he does it all with not a lot of resources because they're going to that bottom lane to give Hansama some gold and some farm. And that is what is all the more impressive about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he makes the clutch moments happen, right? And it's in these late game situations where it really is do or die. And as Vedius was saying, compositionally, it was basically just him and Hansama that had the tools to make plays in a lot of these games. And he comes up huge when it matters. And that's why I think he really is trying to, push into the top ranks of mid laners in the LEC right now.
And it works out so well because he doesn't take a lot of resources. The bot lane addition is doing well. So that's why we're tracking Rogue. Same question for Origen. I know we said some of the best roster changes coming into this year, coming out of the organizational staff. What do you think of them in week 1 and what do we see for them in week 2?
Well, I look at this Origen squad, and what I get excited about is how much more refined they seem to be. Last split, when they finished in 7th place, unable to qualify for playoffs, we couldn't really see the team functioning or working together. But now they feel like, as I said, a still lake. Everything just seems to be so smooth for them. Their execution, their setups, they seem to be well thought out, well prepared, and it just looks like a very high quality, very clean League of Legends from this
It
team.
reminds you so much of actually 2019 spring split Origen, right? A very similar idea where they didn't take a lot of risks, especially when they just win every draft. I thought in week 1, they just smashed their opponents in the draft in both games, or all they had to do was absolutely not run it down, and they were eventually going to win the later the game went on, and they were able to deliver on that. So now for me, it is very much about can they prove themselves in a much more difficult week against Rogue today and against Origen tomorrow. They are finally going to be tested, and I really hope that the opposing coaches are able to do it in the draft.
And so far, I feel like we've seen one style from Origen, which is, as Christy was saying, you draft a strong composition, you know that you're going to scale better, so you don't really need to be super proactive, you can play safe. But I feel that because of players like Xerxes and because of Destiny, you can be way more proactive in terms of your early game playmaking and how you actually look to start fights. And I'm praying that we don't ever see another 2-0Z that doesn't do anything for 50 minutes.
We'll see if that happens. I saw in the fan vote that Origen was edging out Rogue, but slightly, and it was very, very close. I mean, typing in bold on Reddit, just get you a lot of fit. No, I'm kidding, of course.
That's all they do.
Fantastic overall. Great stuff there. Now, for Origen, though, you talked to me about proactivity in the early game and Xerxes being in the jungle that. And there's my question and kind of question marks around the team in general, because we know they always arrive prepared at the beginning of a split. We know they have fantastic drafts. We know they have plans and they can stick to it. But we did sense a kind of upset in their evolution last year because it didn't keep working as the other teams
Yeah, they signed
evolved.
upset is what happened,
But they didn't keep evolving as the other teams did. So what would you like to see in week 2 to show you that they have more in their toolbox coming into this split?
Well, I honestly, it's really interesting because I don't think they necessarily have to prove anything to me themselves. They don't have to go out of their way to do it. It really will come from a team that challenges them very hard in the early game, and then how do they react to it? Because I personally think that this team is going to continue down this road where they go for heavy scaling, they try to draft the superior team fight, and unless you have a strong, proactive early game jungler that can bully you around, you're not going to actually get upset. And that's where I think that when you have Inspired on day 1 and you have Xerxes on day 2, on Jankos on day 2, you might get a little bit.
Well, what you mean is you want to see Inspired on Olaf again, because you love that champion.
I mean, Inspired on Olaf, he can play it. No one else is allowed to play Olaf, okay? He's the only one.
Unless you're pairing it with a Vladimir, of course. But
no, that's just so bad. I can't believe they did that.
But this also gives us the opportunity to focus in on Rogue. And Enra and I are predicting Origen to win out on this matchup. And for me, the main reason for it is Rogue seem to be trying to do everything the Origen already do. And it feels to me that Rogue is just like one tier below in terms of their setup and their execution. And I think back to game 1 when they played against Misfits. They just dominated the laning phase. They used their lead very well. They played the side lanes well. Their vision control, all of it was good, strong, excellent. Then they made one slip up. That one slip up nearly cost them a Baron and could have put them in a much worse position if it weren't for Larson. And it's that slip up that is the difference between them and Origen. We do not see those slip-ups, or at least we haven't so far from this Origen squad. So if you are just trying to emulate what Origen already do, can you do it to the same degree? And my belief is that Rogue will not.
And what is quite interesting also is that you mentioned that Misfits game, but you also called Misfits the worst team in the league from week 1 just 10 minutes ago. So if I look at OG's opponent in Fnatic that they did beat, that just feels a bit different to me, and I think it will be up to Rogue to make the changes, maybe even from the start of draft, and really have a good prepared plan going up against this Origen. We're also going to cover the draft here on the desk with us too, so what would we then like to see from the side of Rogue? What do they need to take away, and what do you want to see them focus on compositionally going into this draft?
Well, as we sort of mentioned before, and I think Vedius was really getting onto something there, you don't want to just play Origen at your own game if you're going to do it worse. I think I want to see some early proactivity from Inspired, but if it's going to be something like the Olaf, you have to pair it with something that can fight next to it in the mid lane too. We saw the game where it was Olaf next to Vladimir, and that didn't really do anything together. So I want it like an Olaf with a mid laner that can support him in invades, in roams, and all of these things, and only then will you have the full ability, I think, to try and crack OG in the early game.
I think that Gragas has to be a big question mark around, do Rogue look to ban that one away? I also wonder, if you are Rogue, where do you invest your resources? Do you try and shut down Nuke Duck, or do you instead try to enable Hansama? My gut would actually be to try and enable the bot lane, get Hansama into a position where he can have a stronger impact in the mid game than someone like Upset can, but also get Destiny off of a comfortable position. He's still new to the LEC. He does not have that same level of experience that someone like a Vander has, and we know that Vander, once he gets that lead, he can get into your head, he can get into your mind, he can read you very well. So I feel that this is an area of attacks that Rogue could look to try and exploit, but the early game is very important, because when we get to the mid and late game, I just feel that the experience gap that Origen has over their opposition will be that will be too difficult for Rogue to stop.
It's also quite the test for